Hello everybody, hope you're doing well. Today I'm going to be doing a very special video. I'm going to be discussing my favourite albums of 2021. And yes, I'm calling it my favourite because I think it's a bit disingenuous calling things like this the best albums or the top albums of 2021, because I don't think even if you didn't have to work a second of your life would you be able to actually listen to every single project that came out in a whole entire year. It's just silly. So instead I'm just going to be going through a few kind of different lists that I've put into different categories and talk about what I've been able to listen to and what I've really enjoyed that came out this year. There's been a lot of great albums, and I'm going to tell you about my favourites, and hopefully there'll be some here that you haven't tried out and you might try it and you might like. So what I think is quite important to discuss in this is, again, about this idea of I haven't got the time to listen to all of these apparently great albums. So I'm going to quickly list off albums that I believe would be albums that I would enjoy, and even though I can't say that I've listened to them, they seem to be, from reading about them and maybe hearing excerpts of songs, that they would be my cup of tea. So I'm still going to mention them despite me still not hearing them. They're going to be albums that I'll be listening to in the future, hopefully near future. And they are Drusara Massal, Delta Estosio Blues, Mdou Moctef, Converge and Chelsea Wolfe, Blood Moon, Panopticon and Again Into Light, Sweet Trip, A Tiny House, In Secret Speeches, Polar Equals, Godspeed You Black Emperor, G_D's P at State's End! Sorry about that, it's in caps lock and I had an exclamation mark, so that's why I shouted that. Anyways, DJ Sabrina, the Teenage DJ, with the 2 albums that she's released. Arcus 3 albums, Genesis Osuo's album, Ethereal Shrouds album, Sophiana Stevens and Angelo de Augustine's album, Magdalena Bay's new album, JPEG Mafia's new album, Lingua Ignota's new album. So that's just a handful of albums that, like I say, of interest to me and hopefully might be an interest to you. And if you've heard these albums, let me know in the comments, because I'd like to know. If you've been following my channel, you might have an idea of the songs that I like, the music I like. So if these albums kind of fit with that same theme, then great, let us know. Now this next list is, again, albums that I can't really say they're my favourite, but not because of the quality, but just because I haven't gave them a fair enough listen. With my reviews, I always try and listen to an album at least 4 times. And these albums I've probably heard all the way through once, maybe twice, and that's it. But still from there, you can still tell if an album is going to be maybe your cup of tea or not. So these albums, in my opinion, still are of good quality, and again, I want to mention them. Squid's album, Bright Green Field. Black Country New Road for the first time. And Spelling with the Turning Wheel. I listened to that a couple of times and I feel it's one of them albums that you need to give a good bunch of listens to really delve into its atmosphere and such like that. So that's them. Now the next list. These are basically runner-up albums. Albums that I really enjoyed but didn't quite make the next list, which is going to be a sort of 10 favourites sort of list. So I've got many here. I'm actually surprised I listened to this many albums that came out this year. These are all albums that I really enjoyed, but didn't quite make, like I say, my 10 favourites. So I'm going to give a shout out to the following. Nick Cave and Warren Ellis's Carnage. I had the very big pleasure of going to see Nick Cave and Warren Ellis at Gateshead at the Sage with a very good friend of mine. Some of you might know him. Forever Trees Green, aka Late Mario 3. We had a great time. And it was really good seeing them live, and actually it became one of them things where I enjoyed the live performance more than the album itself. This album, unlike the early material by Nick Cave, is very solemn, melancholy, and quite atmospheric in terms of how it's more ambient leanings, instead of more of the punk and blues aesthetics that he had previously. But still though, it's a great album. Favourite might be probably the title track. DOS, with 4 new hit songs, and all 4 songs a killer, no filler. This is a great EP. Technically, I suppose I'd say it's my favourite EP that I heard this year, but the only EPs I think I heard this year was this and that Pixie EP done by Echo 2K. But still, this is fantastic. 2 songs I take from this is Strawberry and Puppy. They are on my Vibes playlist, and I highly recommend them songs. They're gorgeous, sort of trance, ethereal sort of songs, and excellent. Really recommend this EP. Halloween with their self-titled album. I did actually review this, so if you'd like to listen to my opinions about this in more detail, then check out that. Cemetery with Rainbow Bridge 3. This is a guy who, when I first put this on, I made the stupid mistake of not turning it down to at least 10% of the volume, because this is an extremely abrasive, loud, and really in-your-face hip-hop album. It takes aesthetics from horrorcore, but mainly noisecore and black metal and such like that, mainly through its sampling. And I've always waited patiently for a hip-hop black metal sort of collaboration. I always thought, especially through the likes of Memphis Rap, that this could be done, and it's kind of done here. So this is going to be not everyone's cup of tea, not whatsoever, definitely not. But I still really enjoyed this thing. The hooks, once you kind of swim through all of the dirt and grit and shit, you'll find them, and this is actually still a really good, solid project. Silk Sonic with An Evening with Silk Sonic. When it comes to Bruno Mars, he's been a guy who he seems to be a person who likes to release some absolute shit, and then he likes to make some of the best hits of a year. And thankfully, he done the latter all on this album. This is a great album. It's a real sexy album. It's a very sensual album, and it's one that you can just put on and you just feel badass. Not like me, who just said that in a really unbadass way. Yep. Next, Lil Ugly Mane with Volcanic Bird Enemy and the Voiced Concern. Something like that. Yes, I'm a huge Lil Ugly Mane fan. I've got all of his projects that he's ever released. And this guy had a very big absence when it come to making music, but he just dropped this out of nowhere. Did have a few singles coming out for it, but never really hinted towards it being on a full album. And this is great. It's not hip-hop whatsoever. It's like a whole collection of different genres here. Again, just solidifying the fact that this guy is a multi-talented dude, and I love this record. It again is sad to hear, but it's even more depressing somehow than his previous material, which I didn't think could get more depressing with his Bedwetter project. But the songwriting, it's just on a different level. This album could have actually made the 10, but it might be just a thing where I need to give it more listens. But this is still a really good project. Injury Reserve with the album By the Time I Get to Phoenix. Talking about depressing material, this is a very depressing album. I'll not go into too much detail, but if you're an Injury Reserve fan, you'll know about a certain person who passed away. And there's a lot to that, I'm sure. But anyways, this album is depressing, but at the same time, it's done in a very interestingly abstract way. The whole album sounds like a dream, and not a particularly pleasant one. There's songs on here which some people wouldn't even class as songs. They're just a lot of strange abstract ideas, and they kind of formulate into a track. But to call this hip-hop, it's the furthest you could get maybe from hip-hop, at least from what I've heard. But saying that, even though this is a strange album, it still contains some of my favourite songs that came out this year. Smoke Don't Clear, I'd say, is probably the most normal sounding track. It's kind of like a sort of banger. But the song Knees, God, that song really hits you. That's one of my favourites, and it's one of those songs that you wouldn't want to put on all the time. You have to be in the right frame of mind to listen to it, because it's a special one. Yeah. Tyler the Creator with Call Me If You're Lost. A departure from his sort of funk and R&B tinged album that he had out, Ego. This is back to his roots in a way. But this album sounds like a Dat Piff mixtape, and I love it for that. Tyler's spitting throughout this whole thing, and it's a great listen. It's like I say, it's different. I think the new fans that he's collected over the last few years with the previous couple of albums might be surprised with this, but I've been an Odd Future fan for a long time, and to hear him kind of go back to similar sounds like that, but far, far more refined, was a real blessing. I love this album. King Gizzard with Butterfly 3000. Once again, King Gizzard tries something new with this record, and on here, they're basically doing psychedelic synth pop. This record reminds me a lot of Oracular Spectacular, the first MGMT album. So if you're a fan of early MGMT, please pick this up. It's got the falsettos like MGMT. I'm not saying they're copying them. They've definitely got a King Gizzard own vibe to it. But that sort of blissful, youthful sound that MGMT had on that first album, I felt it in spades with this record. The song Yours and Shanghai, Black Hot Soup, the title track, all great songs, and this is one of my favourite King Gizzard albums that I've heard. Blade with the album The Fool. Again, I have reviewed this album, and if you would like to know my thoughts in more detail, then please check out my review of it. And that's pretty much it. And worst album? I mean, I don't like to be negative, but, you know, I mean, at the end of the day, people release music because it usually comes out in the heart and the soul. It's very rarely done because it's just done for commercial and money-making reasons and stuff like that. So I like to think that every album that was released, you know, was done with a spirit and an earnestness that I think, even if it's of quality that I don't think is particularly good, you shouldn't judge it, you know. Saying that, the 2 Hobo Johnson albums were fucking shit. And now, the 10 favourite albums of 2021. These aren't really in order, apart from the last one I mentioned, which will be my favourite project I've figured out. But these are the ones that I love. That's all you really need to know. And the first one I'm going to talk about is FactScan with Ethernet. And this was probably actually the first album of 2021 I heard. And I've heard an EP previously by these guys and I really enjoyed it. And them, as well as some other people I'm sure, have created a new subgenre. Yet another one of cloud rap called Hexed. And it's like cloud rap if you were listening to it on a Super Nintendo. It's very lo-fi, but that adds to the aesthetic. Oh boy. And again, cloud rap's going to be, it's niche, but this is niche of niche. You capiche? And this is a record that at first, a bit like the Cemetery record, it's noisy, and I was just like, what's going on here? This is just gimmicky. But again, the more listens I gave it, the more I found the melodies that were actually on these songs. And giving it more listens, it's rewarding. And there's 3 tracks which I'll recommend to you guys that I think you should definitely check out, even if I was saying it might take a few listens and stuff. Anyways, tracks that I'd recommend, for example, is the song Implosion, great hook straight away. Other one called Reality Dreams, which is very noisy, but extremely cathartic, I found as well. And I love the sort of alternate rock, emo, pop sort of melody that was going on here too. And my favourite though has to be the last track on here, Goodbye, which is like the breakup of a relationship that has sadly gone sour, but the people in the relationship aren't calling it quits forever. It's very, very bittersweet, and I love this song. The melody in it is gorgeous. Again, I'd use the word cathartic for this track. I highly recommend this song. Next album on my list, Donda. Kanye West's Donda. Yes, I went through the whole roller coaster of finding out when this album was going to come out and get my hopes up and getting disappointed and hopes up, disappointed, and the live streams and blah, 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 blah. Forget about all that, because in the years to come, we'll just concentrate on what is the quality of the music like. And people are mixed by it. I'm not going to get involved with the politics and the infamous people that he's collaborated with this album, unlike some people. This album, in my opinion, yes, it's slightly mixed, but it's mixed in the regards of like the life of Pablo, and maybe a bit controversial, but I think this is better than the life of Pablo, purely just because I've been returning to a lot more songs on here than I did on the life of Pablo. And yes, it's far more overblown. There are a few tracks here and there where I'm just skip. But even though it's not 100% quality material, the songs that do exist on here are phenomenal, and some of my favourite Kanye songs that have ever came out. We'll go from some of the most hard-hitting and invigorating songs that he's ever released, like Off the Grid, which is on my workout playlist all the time. And then you've got the songs like Come to Life. And I think Come to Life might be my favourite song of this year, so I'm throwing that out there. Wow, I absolutely love that song. I've said before, Kanye always seems to have this idea of making music sometimes, which sounds like it could come from like a Disney musical. I got a lot of that sort of vibe with 808s and Heartbreaks with songs like Robocop, where he's got the orchestration, and he's done that obviously with like Runaway and stuff like that. But this song feels a lot like that, and I love that sort of sound of Kanye. And when I first saw him perform that with the childhood home being burned down and him walking out and stuff like that, I think that's the most epic thing I've seen this year as well. So yeah, love that song. I love many other songs that came on this album as well. Obviously the deluxe edition has brought a few new great ones too, like Life of the Party. Yes, it's a mixed bag, but I think the quality of songs that exist on here, there is a lot, and it has to be on my list. Next in my top 10 is Dark Side with Spiral. This is created by David Harrington and Nicholas Jar, and it's not electronic really, although the last album that released was quite of that nature. This album, Spiral, is almost rock. It's kind of psychedelic and very tribal sounding, very funky, and it's got a lot of... It's very... hypnotic, I think would be the word I'd call this. There's songs on here which are very rhythmic and kind of lull you into a sort of trance. Songs like I'm the Echo and The Question Is to Say It All, but then you've got other tracks like the title track and Only Young, which, wow, these songs are just gorgeous, especially the title track. Title track's probably my favourite on here. The album kind of speaks for itself. I'd really recommend the title track and see what you guys think. Like I say, I was pretty much mesmerised by the whole album. Next is Pierre Bourne with The Life of Pierre 5. This was probably, out of all of these 10, the most surprisingly enjoyable album for me. I followed Pierre, obviously, through his production, through the likes of Playboy and such like that, but I never really bothered with his solo material. I was aware of The Life of Pierre 4. I had it downloaded for a while, but never got around to listening to it. But I tried 5, and I was very highly surprised in a positive way. I think compared to the likes of Playboy's Whole Lotta Red, I think it's night and day. This is it's just a far better album. Pierre, in terms of his production style, I think has really showed off his skills on this album as well. Like, he's known for having a very hypnotic, I'll use that word again, but they're very repetitive, these sort of loops, but they somehow are enjoyable even if you hear these loops for a long period of time throughout a song. But this is definitely the most sort of intricate album that he's ever made, and there's a massive theme that's going on through this album, which is kind of like, it's like his childhood. It's all like this sort of introspective look and reflecting on his younger years and such like that, and because of that you get a lot of the topics on this album being themed around the bad points and the good points of his life, meaning songs like YNS and Retroville and stuff like that. I was surprised again hearing how good this was, because I think this album just starts quite mediocre on the song Switching Lanes, as well as the intro. I wasn't that bothered. And even Hulu, actually, the worst in my opinion is at the start of this album, but once he does that beat switch into Hulu, it's pretty much amazing from here on out. And this is what I mean as well by beat switch. Like, he makes the whole album flow. He'll slow a song down at the very end and it'll flow to the next one, or he'll just do a tiny little beat switch for a bit, and that forms into another beat switch, which is the beats to the next song, so the whole album is really consistent. I mean, I'm looking at my list just up here about what my favourite tracks are on this album, and I've put like half the album, like Couch, 42, YNS, Practice, Retroville, Amen, Groceries, Butterfly, For You. These are all fantastic tracks in my opinion, and that's like I say, like half the album. So that in itself just made us realise, yeah, if I'm calling that majority of the album of that good a quality, I think I need to put it on the list. So highly recommend this one. It might even go as to say it's an underrated album. So please check this one out. Next on my list is Stormkeep with Tales of Other Time. This is a atmospheric black metal album with very melodic elements to it. This is so far the only album that I've heard by Stormkeep. In fact, I think it's the only album they've actually released so far. but I highly enjoyed this album. This is a record that has some very just intense and invigorating sounds to it, as you'd expect from black metal. Very high pitched vocals and very quick tempoed blast beats and such like that. Stuff that you would expect, but there's a lot of mythical elements to this album, especially for the lyrics, for the titles of the songs you'll see as well. But the way the atmosphere is done on this album, as well as the choices of keyboards and such like that, the sort of grouped male choral vocals that come in on some songs here, it just gives it this sense of epicness. And when I say I love escapism in an album that I can close my eyes and the artist who's sort of painting with the brush, the music, and actually kind of accept what they're trying to paint, and I get in with them. This album does it totally for me, and there's some fantastic songs in here. The Seer, The Journey Through Storms, but I've said, in my opinion, my favourite on here would be The Serpent Storm, which I would go as far as to say is a really catchy song. If you're new to black metal, give this song a shot, because later on in the song it's got these again male choral vocals, and they sort of sing along to this drumming which is happening, and it's so catchy. It's like one of the catchiest things I've heard this year, and it's something that would probably surprise you coming from the genres that you might expect that this album is involved with. But yeah, love this album. Probably my favourite metal record, other than Vola, which also should have made my list, I just realised, but oh well. Next is Peter Robinson with Nurture. This album is such a captivating listen. It is blissful in its sounds. It's what I would call an electronic album with a lot of pop elements to it. A lot of the vocals that Porter does on here are pitched up, and that might not appeal to some, but to me it suits the youthful energy that it's got on here. It's such a vibrant and summery album. It's the album to me for this year that I put on if you want to just be happy, you know? And it's similar to the Pierre Bourne album, where I was like going through the majority of the tracks, because there's a lot of tracks on here, and I was thinking, God almighty, I can't believe how many great songs are on here. Look at my notes I've put on. Look at the Sky, Mother, Mirror, Something Confident, Unfold, all 10 out of 10 for me. And my favourite is probably the song Do Re Mi Fa Sol La Ti Do. And it's a strange track, but the glitch elements to this is just, again, it's a song I put on and it just gives us this really warm feeling. And oh man, I love that song. I love this album. I highly recommend it. But going to something a lot more melancholic, we've got the album Low. Hey, what? These guys are a slowcore group, or else they were a slowcore group, but going on since the early 90s. However, they made an album a few years ago, probably one of my favourite albums that have came out of recent times, Double Negative, and they totally changed the sound. They went to start doing electronic music that's very, very atmospheric and very depressive sounding, and just off the wall in how grandiosely noisy the whole thing is. And I was surprised to hear that they could get even noisier with this album. Yeah, careful with your ears when you put this on. It's a spectacle, I've got to say. Now, saying that, it's a hard one, because I love this and I love this, but I love them in different ways, because in terms of the sort of variation of instruments and such like that, this beats this. But in terms of melodies, this ranks supreme in my opinion. Every track, although it's, again, I use the word abstract, quite minimalistic in a way as well, the vocals done by both the male and female singer on here, it's just, they're all fantastic and quite earwormy. For the songs that I've put down that are my favourites on here, songs like White Horses, the song Hey, Days Like These. But my favourite has to be the song More, just because the whole album, quite similar in sound, but you know, if you know, when that song comes on, you're just like, whoa, it's like so different in a good way. again, I'll use the words cathartic. This album will not put you in a good mood by any stretch of the imagination, but there's no doubt that this is an extremely well crafted and very, very good album. We're getting near the end, everybody. This album was going to be my favourite album, and we're talking about Black Midi with Cavalcade. These guys sold me with their first album. I was interested to see what they were going to do next, and they wowed me a hell of a lot with this album. As soon as I put on the song John L, which is again contender for favourite track of the year, I was mesmerised. It is the perfect balance between being extremely scatterbrained and nuts sounding, but still being extremely catchy and funky and awesome, just awesome. It just again, it kind of reminds me of some of my more favourite experimental artists. For example, that first track reminded me of how I felt sometimes listening to some Captain Beefheart records for the first time. And then you've got Hogwashed and Balderdash, which sounds exactly like it comes out of a late era Scott Walker sort of album as well. But saying it's all sort of nuts and sound, and it's not. This album has some extremely beautiful moments on here. There's some slower tracks on here which are very beautiful, like the second track, the song Slow, Diamonds, the last track as well is an epic. This album, not a bad song on here, and again, some of my favourite tracks of the year are on this album. Highly recommend it. If you want to try a rock album which isn't by the numbers, is pushing the limits of what you can classify as your sort of contemporary rock and going out there and exploring the unexplored, this album is killer. So Black Midi's Cavalcade was going to be for a long time my favourite album of the year, but there was a late entry. There was a discovery I made very recently, in fact the last couple of weeks really, and it's overtaken it. What is my favourite project of the year? Not saying it's the best, my favourite. You Draingang fans and stuff like that who follow my channel, because I do a lot of reviews related to them, you'll be slightly surprised and maybe happy to know that there's someone affiliated with them that has made my favourite project. I'm talking about RX Papi and Good with the album Foreign Exchange. This is about 20 minutes long, and when you put it on, it's an album which is sort of cloudy in its sound, has a lot of, it's like cloud rap and stuff like that. And then you hear RX Papi on here, and unlike Draingang members, who on this sort of instrumental that Good would have created for them would be singing and auto-tune and making some sort of woozy, maybe a ballad sort of track, making it very ethereal and stuff like that, you know. No, this guy does the total opposite. He is screaming in your face for pretty much the whole entire time. And what I love about this guy's lyrics, and this is the best thing about this album, I love Good's production, don't get us wrong, but RX Papi is phenomenal on here. What he raps about here is depressing and it's shocking. But the way he does it, the way you feel his emotions on this album, sells this album 100%. I was shocked hearing the things that he said on here, and it's a rare instance that an album do that with me, but he done it. And it's depressing when he's saying about his life and what he's going through and what he had gone through, and that's what I love about this album so much. You know, I wouldn't class this as emo rap. And there's artists out there who can rap and sing about topics which are sad, but they end up being too vague. And I think at the end of the day, I'm an individual, you're an individual, like the 7+ billion people out there are an individual. They've got their own stories, so tell it. Tell your own story. That's what I like, and he does it. No, not everyone is gonna sort of go, oh yeah, I went through that too. But I like that because the way he does it is just, it's just awesome. I love it. When I first heard this first track, 12 Stout Street, wow. Like, it's just, again, blunt, but it's awesome. I can't think of anything else really to talk about with this album. All killer on here. Yeah, I can just say wow when I heard this. Put it on, And you don't need to read the lyrics because the lyrics are delivered you in such throttle that you'll follow them, no bother. And he does it with humour, sort of dabbled here and there, which I enjoy. It's like he's sort of came to the stage and the point of his life, this rapper, where he's not dwelling over this issue. He's going by it in a very macabre humour and stuff like that, which again I think just shows that he can really own the struggles that he's went through. Awesome album, man. Love it. This is my favourite project of the year. RX Papi with Good on the album Foreign Exchange. I really appreciate you guys for checking this video out. Thank you for watching. And let me know. I want to know, because I read all the comments, I'll respond to you, and I will check out any albums that you recommend, either to me or your personal favourites. If you think it's not going to be my cup of tea, I don't care. I like to hear what you like. And if there's any albums that I've mentioned that you enjoy too, let me know. And especially what I'd love is if there's an album that I've recommended here and you check it out and you liked it, I would love to know that too. Because all these albums I've given a shout out for the reason that I want you guys to enjoy something. The music's there to enjoy. I want you to discover this sort of material that's out there that you might have not known otherwise. And my throat's sore. I've talked long enough. Thanks again, everybody. Take care of yourselves. Bye for now.